The new god of the Perfectibilitarian. The new gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The new god of the Perfectibilitarian. The new goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The new goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The new goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The old god of the Perfectibilitarian. The old gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The old god of the Perfectibilitarian. The old goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The old goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The old goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater god of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater god of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser god of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser god of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher god of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher god of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower god of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower god of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater spirits of the Perfectibilitarian. The greater spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser spirits of the Perfectibilitarian. The lesser spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher spirits of the Perfectibilitarian. The higher spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower spirits of the Perfectibilitarian. The lower spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The major god of the Perfectibilitarian. The major gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The major god of the Perfectibilitarian. The major goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The major goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The major goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor god of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor god of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The minor goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior god of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior god of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The superior goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior god of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior god of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The inferior goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The ascendant goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant god of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant god of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent god of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent god of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The transcendent goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The past god of the Perfectibilitarian. The past gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The past god of the Perfectibilitarian. The past goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The past goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The past goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The present god of the Perfectibilitarian. The present gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The present god of the Perfectibilitarian. The present goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The present goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The present goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The future god of the Perfectibilitarian. The future gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The future god of the Perfectibilitarian. The future goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The future goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The future goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The authentic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The synthetic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive god of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive god of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The progressive goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive god of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive god of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The regressive goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary god of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The ordinary goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary god of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary god of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The extraordinary goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The static god of the Perfectibilitarian. The static gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The static god of the Perfectibilitarian. The static goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The static goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The static goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic god of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynamic goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The land god of the Perfectibilitarian. The land gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The land god of the Perfectibilitarian. The land goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The land goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The land goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea god of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea god of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The sea goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky god of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky god of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The sky goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The god of the Perfectibilitarian. The gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The god of the Perfectibilitarian. The goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-god of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-gods of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-god of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-goddesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The half-goddess of the Perfectibilitarian. The vessel of the Perfectibilitarian. The vessels of the Perfectibilitarian. The vessel of the Perfectibilitarian. The name of the Perfectibilitarian. The names of the Perfectibilitarian. The name of the Perfectibilitarian. The person of the Perfectibilitarian. The persons of the Perfectibilitarian. The person of the Perfectibilitarian. The persona of the Perfectibilitarian. The personas of the Perfectibilitarian. The persona of the Perfectibilitarian. The personage of the Perfectibilitarian. The personages of the Perfectibilitarian. The personage of the Perfectibilitarian. The personality of the Perfectibilitarian. The personalities of the Perfectibilitarian. The personality of the Perfectibilitarian. The personification of the Perfectibilitarian. The personifications of the Perfectibilitarian. The personification of the Perfectibilitarian. The image of the Perfectibilitarian. The images of the Perfectibilitarian. The image of the Perfectibilitarian. The imagination of the Perfectibilitarian. The imaginations of the Perfectibilitarian. The imagination of the Perfectibilitarian. The belief of the Perfectibilitarian. The beliefs of the Perfectibilitarian. The belief of the Perfectibilitarian. The thought of the Perfectibilitarian. The thoughts of the Perfectibilitarian. The thought of the Perfectibilitarian. The word of the Perfectibilitarian. The words of the Perfectibilitarian. The word of the Perfectibilitarian. The action of the Perfectibilitarian. The actions of the Perfectibilitarian. The action of the Perfectibilitarian. The reaction of the Perfectibilitarian. The reactions of the Perfectibilitarian. The reaction of the Perfectibilitarian. The feeling of the Perfectibilitarian. The feelings of the Perfectibilitarian. The feeling of the Perfectibilitarian. The situation of the Perfectibilitarian. The situations of the Perfectibilitarian. The situation of the Perfectibilitarian. The circumstance of the Perfectibilitarian. The circumstances of the Perfectibilitarian. The circumstance of the Perfectibilitarian. The environment of the Perfectibilitarian. The environments of the Perfectibilitarian. The environment of the Perfectibilitarian. The relationship of the Perfectibilitarian. The relationships of the Perfectibilitarian. The relationship of the Perfectibilitarian. The number of the Perfectibilitarian. The numbers of the Perfectibilitarian. The number of the Perfectibilitarian. The formula of the Perfectibilitarian. The formulas of the Perfectibilitarian. The formula of the Perfectibilitarian. The equation of the Perfectibilitarian. The equations of the Perfectibilitarian. The equation of the Perfectibilitarian. The theory of the Perfectibilitarian. The theories of the Perfectibilitarian. The theory of the Perfectibilitarian. The symbol of the Perfectibilitarian. The symbols of the Perfectibilitarian. The symbol of the Perfectibilitarian. The color of the Perfectibilitarian. The colors of the Perfectibilitarian. The color of the Perfectibilitarian. The thing of the Perfectibilitarian. The things of the Perfectibilitarian. The thing of the Perfectibilitarian. The way of the Perfectibilitarian. The ways of the Perfectibilitarian. The way of the Perfectibilitarian. The place of the Perfectibilitarian. The places of the Perfectibilitarian. The place of the Perfectibilitarian. The time of the Perfectibilitarian. The times of the Perfectibilitarian. The time of the Perfectibilitarian. The event of the Perfectibilitarian. The events of the Perfectibilitarian. The event of the Perfectibilitarian. The result of the Perfectibilitarian. The results of the Perfectibilitarian. The result of the Perfectibilitarian. The crown of the Perfectibilitarian. The crowns of the Perfectibilitarian. The crown of the Perfectibilitarian. The throne of the Perfectibilitarian. The thrones of the Perfectibilitarian. The throne of the Perfectibilitarian. The Perfectibilitarian king. The Perfectibilitarian kings. The Perfectibilitarian kingdom. The Perfectibilitarian kingdoms. The Perfectibilitarian king's subject. The Perfectibilitarian king's subjects. The Perfectibilitarian king's dominion. The Perfectibilitarian king's dominions. The kingdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The kingdoms of the Perfectibilitarian. The kingdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The Perfectibilitarian queen. The Perfectibilitarian queens. The Perfectibilitarian queendom. The Perfectibilitarian queendoms. The Perfectibilitarian queen subject. The Perfectibilitarian queen subjects. The Perfectibilitarian queen's dominion. The Perfectibilitarian queen's dominions. The queendom of the Perfectibilitarian. The queendoms of the Perfectibilitarian. The queendom of the Perfectibilitarian. The Perfectibilitarian prince. The Perfectibilitarian princes. The Perfectibilitarian princedom. The Perfectibilitarian princedoms. The Perfectibilitarian prince's subject. The Perfectibilitarian prince's subjects. The Perfectibilitarian prince's dominion. The Perfectibilitarian prince's dominions. The princedom of the Perfectibilitarian. The princedoms of the Perfectibilitarian. The princedom of the Perfectibilitarian. The Perfectibilitarian princess. The Perfectibilitarian princesses. The Perfectibilitarian princessdom. The Perfectibilitarian princessdoms. The Perfectibilitarian princess's subject. The Perfectibilitarian princess's subjects. The Perfectibilitarian princess's dominion. The Perfectibilitarian princess's dominions. The princessdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The princessdoms of the Perfectibilitarian. The princessdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The lord of the Perfectibilitarian. The lords of the Perfectibilitarian. The lord of the Perfectibilitarian. The lordess of the Perfectibilitarian. The lordesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The lordess of the Perfectibilitarian. The priest of the Perfectibilitarian. The priests of the Perfectibilitarian. The priest of the Perfectibilitarian. The priestess of the Perfectibilitarian. The priestesses of the Perfectibilitarian. The priestess of the Perfectibilitarian. The ritual of the Perfectibilitarian. The rituals of the Perfectibilitarian. The ritual of the Perfectibilitarian. The shrine of the Perfectibilitarian. The shrines of the Perfectibilitarian. The shrine of the Perfectibilitarian. The temple of the Perfectibilitarian. The temples of the Perfectibilitarian. The temple of the Perfectibilitarian. The leader of the Perfectibilitarian. The leaders of the Perfectibilitarian. The leader of the Perfectibilitarian. The follower of the Perfectibilitarian. The followers of the Perfectibilitarian. The follower of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural substances of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural substances of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal substances of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual substances of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual substance of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural form of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural forms of the Perfectibilitarian. The natural form of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural form of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural forms of the Perfectibilitarian. The supernatural form of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal form of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal forms of the Perfectibilitarian. The temporal form of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual form of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual forms of the Perfectibilitarian. The spiritual form of the Perfectibilitarian. The age of the Perfectibilitarian. The ages of the Perfectibilitarian. The age of the Perfectibilitarian. The era of the Perfectibilitarian. The eras of the Perfectibilitarian. The era of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakener of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakeners of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakener of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakening of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakenings of the Perfectibilitarian. The awakening of the Perfectibilitarian. The realm of the Perfectibilitarian. The realms of the Perfectibilitarian. The realm of the Perfectibilitarian. The dimension of the Perfectibilitarian. The dimensions of the Perfectibilitarian. The dimension of the Perfectibilitarian. The zone of the Perfectibilitarian. The zones of the Perfectibilitarian. The zone of the Perfectibilitarian. The frequency of the Perfectibilitarian. The frequencies of the Perfectibilitarian. The frequency of the Perfectibilitarian. The century of the Perfectibilitarian. The centuries of the Perfectibilitarian. The century of the Perfectibilitarian. The millennium of the Perfectibilitarian. The millenniums of the Perfectibilitarian. The millennium of the Perfectibilitarian. The purpose of the Perfectibilitarian. The purposes of the Perfectibilitarian. The purpose of the Perfectibilitarian. The meaning of the Perfectibilitarian. The meanings of the Perfectibilitarian. The meaning of the Perfectibilitarian. The culture of the Perfectibilitarian. The cultures of the Perfectibilitarian. The culture of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstrator of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstrators of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstrator of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstration of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstrations of the Perfectibilitarian. The demonstration of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifester of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifestors of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifester of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifestation of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifestations of the Perfectibilitarian. The manifestation of the Perfectibilitarian. The presence of the Perfectibilitarian. The presences of the Perfectibilitarian. The presence of the Perfectibilitarian. The glow of the Perfectibilitarian. The glows of the Perfectibilitarian. The glow of the Perfectibilitarian. The goal of the Perfectibilitarian. The goals of the Perfectibilitarian. The goal of the Perfectibilitarian. The plan of the Perfectibilitarian. The plans of the Perfectibilitarian. The plan of the Perfectibilitarian. The book of the Perfectibilitarian. The books of the Perfectibilitarian. The book of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosopher of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosophers of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosopher of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosophy of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosophies of the Perfectibilitarian. The philosophy of the Perfectibilitarian. The releaser of the Perfectibilitarian. The releasers of the Perfectibilitarian. The releaser of the Perfectibilitarian. The release of the Perfectibilitarian. The releases of the Perfectibilitarian. The release of the Perfectibilitarian. The variable of the Perfectibilitarian. The variables of the Perfectibilitarian. The variable of the Perfectibilitarian. The cause of the Perfectibilitarian. The causes of the Perfectibilitarian. The cause of the Perfectibilitarian. The effect of the Perfectibilitarian. The effects of the Perfectibilitarian. The effect of the Perfectibilitarian. The journey of the Perfectibilitarian. The journeys of the Perfectibilitarian. The journey of the Perfectibilitarian. The emergence of the Perfectibilitarian. The emergences of the Perfectibilitarian. The emergence of the Perfectibilitarian. The source of the Perfectibilitarian. The sources of the Perfectibilitarian. The source of the Perfectibilitarian. The originator of the Perfectibilitarian. The originators of the Perfectibilitarian. The originator of the Perfectibilitarian. The origin of the Perfectibilitarian. The origins of the Perfectibilitarian. The origin of the Perfectibilitarian. The forefather of the Perfectibilitarian. The forefathers of the Perfectibilitarian. The forefather of the Perfectibilitarian. The foremother of the Perfectibilitarian. The foremothers of the Perfectibilitarian. The foremother of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestors of the Perfectibilitarian. The ancestor of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendants of the Perfectibilitarian. The descendant of the Perfectibilitarian. The lineage of the Perfectibilitarian. The lineages of the Perfectibilitarian. The lineage of the Perfectibilitarian. The heritage of the Perfectibilitarian. The heritages of the Perfectibilitarian. The heritage of the Perfectibilitarian. The heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The heirs of the Perfectibilitarian. The heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The co-heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The co-heirs of the Perfectibilitarian. The co-heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The joint heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The joint heirs of the Perfectibilitarian. The joint heir of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynasty of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynasties of the Perfectibilitarian. The dynasty of the Perfectibilitarian. The force of the Perfectibilitarian. The forces of the Perfectibilitarian. The force of the Perfectibilitarian. The law of the Perfectibilitarian. The laws of the Perfectibilitarian. The law of the Perfectibilitarian. The pact of the Perfectibilitarian. The pacts of the Perfectibilitarian. The pact of the Perfectibilitarian. The game of the Perfectibilitarian. The games of the Perfectibilitarian. The game of the Perfectibilitarian. The mask of the Perfectibilitarian. The masks of the Perfectibilitarian. The mask of the Perfectibilitarian. The armor of the Perfectibilitarian. The armors of the Perfectibilitarian. The armor of the Perfectibilitarian. The sword of the Perfectibilitarian. The swords of the Perfectibilitarian. The sword of the Perfectibilitarian. The shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The shields of the Perfectibilitarian. The shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The force shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The force shields of the Perfectibilitarian. The force shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The armored force shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The armored force shields of the Perfectibilitarian. The armored force shield of the Perfectibilitarian. The champion of the Perfectibilitarian. The champions of the Perfectibilitarian. The champion of the Perfectibilitarian. The guardian of the Perfectibilitarian. The guardians of the Perfectibilitarian. The guardian of the Perfectibilitarian. The defender of the Perfectibilitarian. The defenders of the Perfectibilitarian. The defender of the Perfectibilitarian. The protector of the Perfectibilitarian. The protectors of the Perfectibilitarian. The protector of the Perfectibilitarian. The chant of the Perfectibilitarian. The chants of the Perfectibilitarian. The chant of the Perfectibilitarian. The shape of the Perfectibilitarian. The shapes of the Perfectibilitarian. The shape of the Perfectibilitarian. The cube of the Perfectibilitarian. The cubes of the Perfectibilitarian. The cube of the Perfectibilitarian. The cuboid of the Perfectibilitarian. The cuboids of the Perfectibilitarian. The cuboid of the Perfectibilitarian. The sphere of the Perfectibilitarian. The spheres of the Perfectibilitarian. The sphere of the Perfectibilitarian. The spheroid of the Perfectibilitarian. The spheroids of the Perfectibilitarian. The spheroid of the Perfectibilitarian. The prism of the Perfectibilitarian. The prisms of the Perfectibilitarian. The prism of the Perfectibilitarian. The pyramid of the Perfectibilitarian. The pyramids of the Perfectibilitarian. The pyramid of the Perfectibilitarian. The cylinder of the Perfectibilitarian. The cylinders of the Perfectibilitarian. The cylinder of the Perfectibilitarian. The cone of the Perfectibilitarian. The cones of the Perfectibilitarian. The cone of the Perfectibilitarian. The triangle of the Perfectibilitarian. The triangles of the Perfectibilitarian. The triangle of the Perfectibilitarian. The circle of the Perfectibilitarian. The circles of the Perfectibilitarian. The circle of the Perfectibilitarian. The semicircle of the Perfectibilitarian. The semicircles of the Perfectibilitarian. The semicircle of the Perfectibilitarian. The square of the Perfectibilitarian. The squares of the Perfectibilitarian. The square of the Perfectibilitarian. The rectangle of the Perfectibilitarian. The rectangles of the Perfectibilitarian. The rectangle of the Perfectibilitarian. The parallelogram of the Perfectibilitarian. The parallelograms of the Perfectibilitarian. The parallelogram of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhombus of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhombuses of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhombus of the Perfectibilitarian. The trapezoid of the Perfectibilitarian. The trapezoids of the Perfectibilitarian. The trapezoid of the Perfectibilitarian. The polygon of the Perfectibilitarian. The polygons of the Perfectibilitarian. The polygon of the Perfectibilitarian. The pentagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The pentagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The pentagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The hexagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The hexagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The hexagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The septagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The septagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The septagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The octagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The octagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The octagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The nonagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The nonagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The nonagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The decagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The decagons of the Perfectibilitarian. The decagon of the Perfectibilitarian. The evolution of the Perfectibilitarian. The evolutions of the Perfectibilitarian. The evolution of the Perfectibilitarian. The revolution of the Perfectibilitarian. The revolutions of the Perfectibilitarian. The revolution of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental arts of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental sciences of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental principles of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental technologies of the Perfectibilitarian. The elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental arts of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental sciences of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental principles of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental technologies of the Perfectibilitarian. The low elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental arts of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental art of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental sciences of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental science of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental principles of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental principle of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental technologies of the Perfectibilitarian. The high elemental technology of the Perfectibilitarian. The agent of the Perfectibilitarian. The agents of the Perfectibilitarian. The agent of the Perfectibilitarian. The agency of the Perfectibilitarian. The agencies of the Perfectibilitarian. The agency of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplifier of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplifiers of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplifier of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplification of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplifications of the Perfectibilitarian. The amplification of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancer of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancers of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancer of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancement of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancements of the Perfectibilitarian. The enhancement of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnifier of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnifiers of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnifier of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnification of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnifications of the Perfectibilitarian. The magnification of the Perfectibilitarian. The influencer of the Perfectibilitarian. The influencers of the Perfectibilitarian. The influencer of the Perfectibilitarian. The influence of the Perfectibilitarian. The influences of the Perfectibilitarian. The influence of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanator of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanators of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanator of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanation of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanations of the Perfectibilitarian. The emanation of the Perfectibilitarian. The converger of the Perfectibilitarian. The convergers of the Perfectibilitarian. The converger of the Perfectibilitarian. The convergence of the Perfectibilitarian. The convergences of the Perfectibilitarian. The convergence of the Perfectibilitarian. The aura of the Perfectibilitarian. The auras of the Perfectibilitarian. The aura of the Perfectibilitarian. The impression of the Perfectibilitarian. The impressions of the Perfectibilitarian. The impression of the Perfectibilitarian. The intelligence of the Perfectibilitarian. The intelligences of the Perfectibilitarian. The intelligence of the Perfectibilitarian. The sophistication of the Perfectibilitarian. The sophistications of the Perfectibilitarian. The sophistication of the Perfectibilitarian. The genius of the Perfectibilitarian. The geniuses of the Perfectibilitarian. The genius of the Perfectibilitarian. The polymath of the Perfectibilitarian. The polymaths of the Perfectibilitarian. The polymath of the Perfectibilitarian. The psychic of the Perfectibilitarian. The psychics of the Perfectibilitarian. The psychic of the Perfectibilitarian. The knowledge of the Perfectibilitarian. The knowledges of the Perfectibilitarian. The knowledge of the Perfectibilitarian. The understanding of the Perfectibilitarian. The understandings of the Perfectibilitarian. The understanding of the Perfectibilitarian. The wisdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The wisdoms of the Perfectibilitarian. The wisdom of the Perfectibilitarian. The secret of the Perfectibilitarian. The secrets of the Perfectibilitarian. The secret of the Perfectibilitarian. The mystery of the Perfectibilitarian. The mysteries of the Perfectibilitarian. The mystery of the Perfectibilitarian. The revelation of the Perfectibilitarian. The revelations of the Perfectibilitarian. The revelation of the Perfectibilitarian. The tactic of the Perfectibilitarian. The tactics of the Perfectibilitarian. The tactic of the Perfectibilitarian. The strategy of the Perfectibilitarian. The strategies of the Perfectibilitarian. The strategy of the Perfectibilitarian. The strength of the Perfectibilitarian. The strengths of the Perfectibilitarian. The strength of the Perfectibilitarian. The might of the Perfectibilitarian. The mights of the Perfectibilitarian. The might of the Perfectibilitarian. The power of the Perfectibilitarian. The powers of the Perfectibilitarian. The power of the Perfectibilitarian. The authority of the Perfectibilitarian. The authorities of the Perfectibilitarian. The authority of the Perfectibilitarian. The dominion of the Perfectibilitarian. The dominions of the Perfectibilitarian. The dominion of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhythm of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhythms of the Perfectibilitarian. The rhythm of the Perfectibilitarian. The melody of the Perfectibilitarian. The melodies of the Perfectibilitarian. The melody of the Perfectibilitarian. The music of the Perfectibilitarian. The musics of the Perfectibilitarian. The music of the Perfectibilitarian. The lyric of the Perfectibilitarian. The lyrics of the Perfectibilitarian. The lyric of the Perfectibilitarian. The song of the Perfectibilitarian. The songs of the Perfectibilitarian. The song of the Perfectibilitarian. The dance of the Perfectibilitarian. The dances of the Perfectibilitarian. The dance of the Perfectibilitarian. The spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The spirits of the Perfectibilitarian. The spirit of the Perfectibilitarian. The soul of the Perfectibilitarian. The souls of the Perfectibilitarian. The soul of the Perfectibilitarian. The body of the Perfectibilitarian. The bodies of the Perfectibilitarian. The body of the Perfectibilitarian. The mark of the Perfectibilitarian. The marks of the Perfectibilitarian. The mark of the Perfectibilitarian. The promise of the Perfectibilitarian. The promises of the Perfectibilitarian. The promise of the Perfectibilitarian. The visionary of the Perfectibilitarian. The visionaries of the Perfectibilitarian. The visionary of the Perfectibilitarian. The vision of the Perfectibilitarian. The visions of the Perfectibilitarian. The vision of the Perfectibilitarian. The picture of the Perfectibilitarian. The pictures of the Perfectibilitarian. The picture of the Perfectibilitarian. The sound of the Perfectibilitarian. The sounds of the Perfectibilitarian. The sound of the Perfectibilitarian. The dung of the Perfectibilitarian. The dungs of the Perfectibilitarian. The dung of the Perfectibilitarian. The language of the Perfectibilitarian. The languages of the Perfectibilitarian. The language of the Perfectibilitarian. The communication of the Perfectibilitarian. The communications of the Perfectibilitarian. The communication of the Perfectibilitarian. The people of the Perfectibilitarian. The peoples of the Perfectibilitarian. The people of the Perfectibilitarian. The society of the Perfectibilitarian. The societies of the Perfectibilitarian. The society of the Perfectibilitarian. The fortress of the Perfectibilitarian. The fortresses of the Perfectibilitarian. The fortress of the Perfectibilitarian. The government of the Perfectibilitarian. The governments of the Perfectibilitarian. The government of the Perfectibilitarian. The city of the Perfectibilitarian. The cities of the Perfectibilitarian. The city of the Perfectibilitarian. The nation of the Perfectibilitarian. The nations of the Perfectibilitarian. The nation of the Perfectibilitarian. The civilization of the Perfectibilitarian. The civilizations of the Perfectibilitarian. The civilization of the Perfectibilitarian. The world of the Perfectibilitarian. The worlds of the Perfectibilitarian. The world of the Perfectibilitarian.